Welcome to the 10K Creator, a podcast with me, Darren Smith from Craftsman Creative, and your own Joe Pulizzi, where we document and break down how I and other content entrepreneurs can get to 10,000 email subscribers and $10,000 per month in revenue.
Hello and welcome. My name is Joe Pulizzi, and welcome to the 10K Creator podcast / show. Super excited to launch this thing off with my friend Daren Smith. I'm going to bring you in, Darren. And what I really like to do, we're going to talk about why we're doing this show, why we decided to put it on this channel, the whole thing. But it's probably important for you to kind of introduce yourself to the audience and then also talk about how the heck we even got to this point. So I'll let you take it from here.
That's awesome. And thanks, Joe. This has been something I've been thinking about for a little while, and it's come together rather quickly, which is awesome. We're going to dive into all of that. But basically, the idea for this show came from, I did a quick 5-minute presentation at the ConvertKit Craft and Commerce back a few months ago. And I had a number of people come up to me afterwards because my presentation was about how to succeed as a creative, even if you don't have all of the benefits and the leverage of having 4 million followers or a massive email list or any of those things. And people came up and they were so grateful that I spoke as someone who's in the same position as them. At the time, I had 1,800 followers online. I was making it maybe a few $1,000s a month for my creative work. And they're just like, wow, I feel like I can learn more from you because you're in it. And that sparked the idea of this podcast. And so what every episode is going to be is part documentary and part education. And it's really an opportunity for me to benefit from your experience in the creator economy and basically walk people through what are the strategies, what are the mindsets, what are the things that work at every stage of the creative journey from becoming, as you say, a creator to a creative entrepreneur. And so I'm really, really excited because I can also help educate a little bit up to where I'm at. But at some point, we're going to reach the edge of the cliff where I'm standing, and it's uncharted territory at that point.
Yeah,
so
that's
really
great.
Cool to see how it turns out.
Yeah, so the first few episodes, we're thinking 10 episodes is going to be our first season of this thing. So the first few episodes, we're kind of going to dig into the early part of the process. And then the last few episodes, it's going to be your struggle in a lot of ways. And we may or may not have some guest stars that's going to join you along the way. So we'll see how it goes. But it's really, so first of all, 10K. Why 10K?
All right.
We probably need to say that.
We definitely need to explain the name of the show. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So 10K represents two outcomes that I think all of us creators care about, but that I'm specifically aiming for with this podcast and in my creative life. So 10K audience size. And as we'll talk about, we're not talking about Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. We're talking about an email list of 10,000 engaged readers. And then the other side of that is 10K per month in revenue.
Yep.
So from your creative work, whether you're an artist, a musician, a writer, a filmmaker, figuring out how to do creative work where you're bringing in $10,000 a month, which means for most people in most parts of the world, you can kind of live life on your terms. You have independence, you have freedom, you have your time, all of those things that we all aspire to as creators. So that's the goal, 10K on both sides.
I like it. And it's catchy. I really I like it. I presented recently in Content Marketing World talking about it, and people got it right away, whether it's 10K creator podcast show, whatever the case is. Obviously, we're doing this in video. We're doing it on the Content Inc. channel, the whole thing. But I think I want to sort of talk a little bit about how we got here. We're gonna absolutely talk in this episode about getting started, and you're going to get some great takeaways. But I think it's important to talk about serendipity.
Hey there, we will get right back to the show after a few quick words about our incredible sponsors.
Whether you have an established following or you're just starting out, books are an easy way to build credibility, diversify your revenue streams, and connect with your community. And just like Darren, you can use Lulu's free platform to turn your best performing content into a beautiful book to benefit your creative endeavors. With their e-commerce plugins, growing your audience and selling your work directly has never been easier. Create an account today to publish, print, and prosper at lulu.com, Lulu.com. Watch your first YouTube video. Read your first blog post. Find your first newsletter. Listen to your first podcast episode. Now, compare it to your most recent piece of content. It's night and day, isn't it? That's how much your content has grown, how much you've grown. If you're like most creators, your email marketing platform reminds you of that first creative effort. It has not kept up. You need a fresh start. Get that fresh start with ConvertKit. StreamYard is the easiest way to create content right in your browser. You can multi-stream to your social media platforms, host a weekly show with special guests, create webinars, record podcasts, create videos, and more. And they make it easy to brand and customize your videos inside the studio before you even go live. StreamYard's a popular tool amongst live streamers, video creators, YouTubers, and podcasters. StreamYard makes it simple to get professional and polished content every time. Get started now for free at StreamYard.com. You and I probably first got hooked up on some of the stuff that I was doing. You became part of the Tilt community. Mm-hmm. You were on Discord. We were trading some messages back and forth. And then we did not meet until Creator Economy Expo for the first time, which was in May of 22. And you came up to me and you basically just said, hey, I got some ideas. And of course, we had when you get together in person, everything is different. That's why I'm a huge events proponent. Like you should go to any relevant event you could possibly go to, because things happen that will never happen to content entrepreneurs unless you're actually there in person. So you and I get the opportunity. We were right outside the general session and we were just chatting and we said, hey, you said, hey, I got a couple ideas. I'm like, great, let's chat about it. And then that led to sort of this next thing. And what was great about it is that you pitched me this idea. Hey, let's do this podcast. I loved it right away because I love I believe in the 10,000 email subscribers thing. That was my start with Content Marketing Institute, was getting to 10K. And I felt that 10K email subscribers, I could start to really monetize. So from that standpoint, I loved it. But when you came to me, I said, look, I'm doing a lot of stuff for marketing right now. I said, we need some support to get this done. I said, if we can go and sell 3 sponsorships, I think we're a go. And I don't even know, what did you even think when I said? Did you say like, hey, this is a new show and new shows don't get sponsorship right away? Like, what did you think when I was pitching you that?
No, it just felt like, okay, Joe's got a system, so let's follow it. It felt like you knew what you were doing. But it also was perfect because as a filmmaker, and we'll get into kind of my background, but pre-selling your script, your TV show pitch, your pilot idea is how the industry works. You rarely go out and spend your own money to produce something and then hope that someone makes it. If you're being really smart and responsible as a producer, yeah. There are times where independent filmmakers go do that, but that's a tangent for another day.
No, but the idea is, and by the way, not enough content creators pre-sell their work. And Absolutely. You have to be a little bit audacious to do it. But if you believe in what you're doing, you absolutely. So we went and we put together a little pitch, and then Mark Angelos on our team for sales. We went out to 3 of our best partners that all came in relatively quickly, because this idea, probably 2 months ago, was when we really started to think about it. And we put the whole package together. And then our friends at Lulu, our friends at ConvertKit, and our friends at StreamYard all came together and said yes. And of course, throughout the show, they'll get little reads. But these are 3 companies that are really behind us and what you and I are doing, and are have the belief that you can be a successful content creator and you don't necessarily have to be reliant on social media channels. That's really important for the way that I think, because I don't like building on rented land. We'll talk about that in this program as well. So anyways, here we are. We got the support. We're doing the thing. And well, why don't you sort of kick it off with, who the heck are you? The whole craftsman. And by the way, you and I have talked a lot, but you've never laid out like what your outcome-based approach is. And I'm sort of fascinated by it. So why don't you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. So let me give as much context as I can in as little time as possible. So I have considered myself a creator my whole life. I mean, I was in jazz bands that I started in high school. I performed in college. I've owned my own business since while I was in college. I started my first like post-production sound company. So I've been a freelancer, a creative person my whole adult life. And I've also been a writer for a long time. And this will probably resonate with a lot of people who listen to this podcast, but I've started and stopped a lot of different creative projects. I've probably had a dozen different blogs that I tried to grow and try to find readership for. I remember one day I got like a huge, massive spike on like Stumble Upon or Dig and had like 4,000 visitors to my site. And it was a record day. This was like 10, 12, 15 years
I
ago,
love it.
right?
Stumble Upon and Dig, the early days of social media.
Early days. So I've been around
fantastic.
for a while, but nobody knows who I am because I never succeeded at any of it, right? I had a bad approach to creative work. And that even applied to like the business that I had. I had a video production company with a partner that really didn't grow over about 10 years. And it wasn't until I read this book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And in the very first section of the book, he talks about two different approaches to creative work. One is like, follow your passion, work really hard. Like if you're not making it yet, do more work and get better at your work. But that's what I'd tried for like a decade and it didn't work for me. But the other approach is what he called a craftsman approach or a craftsman mindset approach to creative work. And what he meant was thinking about the outcome that you want and then kind of reverse engineering, working your way back to where you're at so that the path ahead of you is laid right there. And you can just start taking very conscious steps in the right direction, knowing that you're getting closer and closer and closer to your goal. So that was about mid 2010s or like 2015, 16. I forget when that book came out. But 2017, I left my video production company and started DS Media, which is kind of my umbrella company for everything. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, launched Craftsman Creative, which was just this idea that I had that came from that book. I didn't know what it was going to be. I had no idea what the outcome was, but I wanted to figure it out. So I started doing what I was trying to do for a decade, which is producing. I produced 4 seasons of a television show for BYU Television. And then in 2021, produced my first feature film. And I did 2 this year in 2022. The last, it's just funny because I pitched this show to you while I was in South Africa producing an international movie. So that's kind of my background. And that's where I get my full-time income from. But last year, this is where all the serendipity starts coming into play when you think about an outcome. The first feature that I did was an amazing experience, but I overworked myself. I took too low of a rate. I said yes because I wanted to be a part of it, and it was an opportunity for me to do what I wanted to do, be a movie producer. But I got to the end of that and realized, wow, I just spent 7 or 8 weeks doing 80-hour weeks, working from 6:30 in the morning to 11 at night, not getting the credit I deserved, not making as much money as I should have. And I came out of it going, I love producing movies, but not like that.
Yeah.
And I realized that, okay, I would probably lose my marriage and have really crappy relationships with my kids if I was doing 5-6 movies a year in those sort of circumstances. So the outcome that I wanted was the ability to do like 2 movies a year and have some extra income from my creative work that could support me and sustain my family and provide income. So I wasn't only dependent on this one freelance type work. So right around that time, summer last year, stumbled across a book called Content Inc. by Joe Pulizzi, who I had never heard of before. And the book resonated so much because it was exactly what I was looking for. Here is a plan. Here is a step-by-step process to doing creative work at the level that I wanted to be doing it at. So I read that book, and then all these different things started happening. You guys started Tiltcoin. I was getting into Web3 stuff and cryptocurrencies and creator coins. Found Brian Clark, found you guys, found all these different communities, and really resonated with everything you guys were working towards and just your ethos about it all. And so I took the dive in August of last year to say, all right, I'm going to plant a flag. I'm going to write a book called Craftsman Creative. I'm going to do it in public because I think you talked about that. Many other creators talked about building in public. And that was my entry into, I'm going to be at very least a part-time creator, but I want to have a full-time income from this creative work from Craftsman Creative. And that's when it started. And so just over a few months, wrote a book, launched it, started focusing on growing an email list even more consciously. In those 6 months or so, doubled my email list, doubled my Twitter following, which is what I use to like get people onto my email list, and felt like, okay, I could have a shot at this, but I'm also impatient.
Yep.
And so when we talked at CEX, your invitation was, hey, we should chat because I think you're working hard and we're doing stuff with the tilt, and let's keep in touch. And I kind of took that to mean there's an opportunity there for me to potentially work with the tilt or with Joe, and I just kind of thought about it. Then I went out and produced this movie in South Africa, sent you an email like, hey, I got an idea. And here we are. And so
you had no sleep. Yeah, you were.
Oh man,
you said that because you were delirious. You're like, I'm going to send him this crazy idea.
Crazy idea, yes, but I think in a different context, it's a very strategic idea. And I think it's important to highlight that for the listeners to go, I didn't just luck into this. I was doing something remarkable, and I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but like people were talking about my book, and having a book, someone called it a business card on steroids. And so when I came and handed you and handed Brian and handed Jared and handed a bunch of people signed copies of my book, you could instantly see that I'm serious about this whole creator thing because I did it, right? And it rose me out of that, like, oh, he's a small creator because I had 1,000 or 1,500 followers, to like, oh, this guy's serious. Maybe I need to keep him on my radar. So because of all those different touch points over a year, by the time I finally pitched the idea for the show to you, we already knew each other. I wasn't starting from scratch. It wasn't a cold email. And it kind of greased the runway for us to be able to be sitting here with episode 1 of this show, which I'm very, very stoked for.
Well, and also, by the way, you reached out and you wanted distribution for your book. And you said, can I deliver the book at the event? We said, absolutely. But I think the one thing,
that part.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it worked, right? You got it into the hands of 400 creators at that first event, and everyone there knows you, and you become like a mini superstar at the event because, oh yeah, that's the book. And I talked about this in a Content Inc. podcast a few weeks before, but I believe in this 3 legs of the publishing stool. I've been talking about this for 15 years, and you're working on that right now. You have a different process, but when I look at it as, I used to call it a blog, but it's your platform. Like, what's your platform? So is it your email newsletter? Is it your blog? Is it your podcast? Is it a YouTube series? Whatever it is. And then the second part of that is a book, which is, I mean, people who listen to this know my whole story. I have a plan that I write a book and publish a book every 2 years, and I have since 2008. And that's part of the plan to keep everything that we're doing moving, and probably has to be one of the top 3 strategic things I've done is that process of writing the book. And then that leads to opportunities like we're doing here. It leads to speaking opportunities. It leads to the serendipitous opportunities that you would never expect, but it happens because you have this platform and you have this book and people take you seriously. So anyways, I'd pitch a book to anyone, but you got that early on. So you already know how important that whole process is. But so,
yeah. And I think it's important to share the serendipity that happened over the last 6-8 months as well, because it ties in everything we've talked about, this outcome focused approach to creative work. I knew that I wanted to get my book out there. I wanted to grow my platform, and I wanted to have a certain amount of income from this creative work. So one of the first things I did when you guys announced CEX was I reached out and I said, hey, I have an idea for a presentation. That didn't go anywhere. That was like dead in the water. And so the next thing I did was, well, I have this book. I'm going to spend whatever it was, $1,250 or so to print the book, if you guys will let me basically put it in the swag bag of every single person that comes to the event. And that was an easier yes for you guys, because that's value. So that's a lesson right there, is like me offering to present, that's value for you, yes, but maybe arguably more valuable for me. Whereas offering a free copy of my new book, that's super valuable. And people are going to see like, wow, we got a free book from this event. That's super cool. So that worked out great. And what was very serendipitous about this whole thing was the next booth over was a little company called Lulu. And I walked over to them. I said, hey, guys, I've been handing out this book at the event. You guys are my printers. You guys are the ones that I use. I have Shopify as my store, and you guys are the integration I use. And you print and ship my books for me. And they go, that's so cool. We took pictures, and I met Matt, who's their VP of marketing. And I met the team there. And I was just like, that's a cool company. And I had no idea that they were involved in the creator economy space. So super cool. Got their info, met or connected on LinkedIn. A month later, I had announced that I was going to do the same thing. I was going to give away 300 copies of my book at the Craft and Commerce event in June up in Boise, Idaho, that's put on by ConvertKit, another name you might have heard.
Yeah, exactly.
So Matt from Lulu reaches out and it says, hey, I heard you're going to be giving your books away at Craft and Commerce. Can we print them for you? So holy cow, yes, I would love to save $1,500 in printing my book. And then, so first they offered to do that. They shipped me the books so I could kind of personalize them and put stuff in them. And then I shipped them off to Boise, Idaho. And then about a week or two before the event, Matt reached out and said, hey, I'm doing a presentation. I'd love for you to tell and share your story at Craft and Commerce. So the other thing I had done was reached out to Nathan and the team at ConvertKit and said, hey, I have a presentation that I'd love to give at Craft and Commerce if you're interested. And I pitched them and they said no. It was dead in the water because I'm too small of a creator. But then here we are. I showed Nathan after all. I got my 7 minutes of fame on the main stage at Craft and Commerce in front of 50, 100 people because of all of these steps that I was taking consciously to reach this outcome. So that's why it's such an important lesson for me and especially for me to share with other creators, because it works. You might try as hard as you possibly can to do things your way. And if you're not thinking about the outcome, and if you're not thinking about how the other people that you're going to be working with, how it benefits them, you're not really going to get anywhere. But as soon as you shift your mindset, all of a sudden this path kind of opens up and it becomes a lot easier to take those steps towards the goals that you're working towards.
Well, there's two things. That's a great story. There's two things to unpack. First of all, let's talk about the outcome. And I mean, from reading Content Inc., I've talked about this since forever. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want your outcomes to be? And you need to write those down and review them on a regular basis. And I'll give you an example for what we were trying to do in content marketing. So I left my, just a little history for those people that don't know, I left my executive publishing media job, business publishing in 2007 to start what ultimately became Content Marketing Institute. And I had one of those big, hairy, audacious goals. And in 2008, I wrote it down and I said, I plan to sell whatever this is that I'm working to create, me and my wife getting this thing done. I plan to sell it in 2015 for $15 million. Can you believe how audacious that is? Mm-hmm. I wrote that down. I will sell this thing in 2015 for $15 million. Why 15 million, you ask? Because I talked to my accountant and I said, I need 10 million. I want $10 million because I think that's forever money. So I want forever money so I can be financially free. I don't have to worry about money anymore. I take care of my family, whatever the case is. How much do I need after taxes? He says, you need about 15 million. I'm like, okay. That's what I wrote the goal down. And then I had to be a little bit realistic with the timetable and talking about some of the things we're actually going to unpack here on the show. But it's 2008. And I'm like, okay, well, I can get to that 10,000 subscriber mark, which I ended up hitting in 2009 as I was building it in 2008. I'm like, I don't know, these revenue things, I don't know what it's going to be. I think 2015 is a realistic time to sell a company and make that happen. Wow. So I wrote that down and I reviewed that goal every morning and every evening before I went to sleep. Because I believe in the whole subconscious working at night and things happen and you wake up with amazing ideas. And it gets you to do things in your plan that you wouldn't normally do because that's the outcome you want to see. So I'll take it. So I wrote that down. I'm like, okay, great. This is what I want to do. How do I get started? Well, I had no audience at the time. Nobody knew who I was. My first book at Content Get Customers hadn't come out yet. So I'm literally starting from zero. how do I make this thing happen? Well, maybe a little bit similar to what you did. You started to look at influencers, maybe not the ones that have 1 million followers, but ones that were bigger than me, that had 2,000 followers or subscribers, or 10,000 subscribers, or 20,000 subscribers. And I put together a list of I had a thing with the number 42 at the time, still do. So I had my list of 42 influencers, and I put them down, and I basically listed them, and I tried to figure out what each of their pain points were and how I could add some value to what each of these influencers were doing. And I came up with, what if I listed these people down in like a top content marketing blog? Because they're all I was in the content marketing industry. That was my content tilt, was focusing on this thing called content marketing. And I said, okay, I'm going to put these influencers, that we're going to do like a research project. We're going to rank them. We're going to put the top content marketing blogs together. I'm going to put a press release out, and I'm going to basically give them promotion. Like, my blog was not one of the top content marketing blogs, but my blog was where you would find the top listing of them. And what was amazing, Darren, is I put that release out, and I had a little widget with each one of those top 42, and I sent it out to the top ones. I said, hey, you're ranked, Lee Odden, you're ranked number 10, or Jay Bear, you're ranked number 2. And they all put the little widget on their site with a link back. So these are the most trafficked sites in the industry that link back to my site. And they were, they loved the promotion. And I was filling a little bit of gap for them, because my whole thing was, these people need traffic. Or in this case, when we're having this show, you felt that my channel needed a little bit of this, 10K podcast idea for the smaller creator trying to get started. What's the process? What's the outcome? How does this thing work? So that's where I think a lot of content entrepreneurs or content creators who want to be content entrepreneurs don't think about that outcome, what it should be, and then break that down into steps. So you could say, okay, well, this is where I am. So the first step is, I have no audience. I need to get an audience or community. Who has the audience? And how do I find a gap so I can be of some service to these people? And by the way, we still do that today with the Tilt. We have people on our staff that are absolutely reaching out to 50, 100, 150 different companies in the space. And we're trying to figure out, how can we help you? We'll promote your stuff. If we believe in what you're doing, you can help us. What's a win-win? And I think there's probably too many content creators that like to go it alone. They're like, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to create my own. Oh man, that's so hard. If you're going to speed up this process, and we know the process takes time. So if you want to create some more time, bend time, slow time, however you want to talk, you have to work with partners to fill gaps for them to take you to the next level.
Amazing. I think that's a perfect setup for the rest of this season and how these episodes are going to go. This today is more of an introduction, who we are and what this show's about. But going forward, we're going to be kind of covering every step of the way. So next episode, we're going to talk about, how do you get started? That 0 to 500 followers or $500. What are the steps that you're thinking of at that point? But I think it's really important from this episode for people to take away. You can spend the time between now and next episode thinking about, what are the outcomes that you really care about, that you've been working for 2, 5, 10 years and still haven't achieved. Because the hope, for me at least, for this podcast, is to inspire and to really motivate people to take action, and proving that you don't need 100,000, 1 million followers or all of these connections in order to pull it off. Like, you can start now, and you can start making $500 and then $1,000 and then 2 and then 5 and then 10. And who knows, it might be season 2 or season 3 when I reach those 2 milestones. But being able to document it and share the struggles along the way, I think, is going to be a huge help, and show people that it's possible.
Oh, and I think this is important, because there's so many content creators out there that see the big influencers. And, if you look at the Mr. Beasts of the world, or the Kardashians or whatever, right? It's just like, you've got to realize that 99% of content entrepreneurs out there have audiences of between like 5,000 and 15,000, and they're making a living. and they're doing it. And they we just did a research project at the Tilt and found out that they just want to be making a little bit more and be financially independent. And I think, maybe 2020 changed everybody's attitudes about, we want to focus on what's important in our lives and family and not doing the 9 to 5 necessarily. And that's what I love about being a content creator is I work a lot on different things, but I work on the time that I'm willing to expend on it and not take away from time with my kids, time with my wife, time with my parents, those types of things. And that's what's great about this, because we can create content anytime we need to. And you can make a great living for yourself financially if you, as we'll go through next episode, follow that process, start the right way. So I'm looking forward to digging in this 10 episode season of the 10K Creator Podcast. Thank you for twisting my arm on making it. And by the way, thank you for letting me put it on the Content Inc. channel, because I'll just cover this real quickly. I like the Prof G podcast, Scott Galloway. I've been a follower of his for a while, and he has 4 different podcasts on his stream. And that's where you and I talked about. And I said, why can't we do that? Like, why do we have to start fresh? We're targeting the same audience. It makes perfect sense. We have some trust there already. Let's put the new, instead of starting something fresh. So I think that the way we're doing this as well is sort of an experiment, but I think it's the right experiment.
Well, I think it's going to be much easier to double your listeners from this podcast rather than to try to get from 0 to 5 or 10,000 listeners from scratch, because then you have to tell everybody and you're starting from zero awareness. Whereas already on your show, you've got thousands of creators who know you and trust you. And like when you bring on a new show like this, it's an easy listen, right? Just another one that pops up. They're already subscribed. Like, man, that's such a smart way to do it. I'm excited to see how it pans out for your goals and for your goals with the Tilt, to see if it was the right move.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, we're an open book with this podcast, and I shared this with you. Our monthly downloads for Content Inc. podcast are between 16 and 20,000. So we're going to look at that as sort of, okay, well, how does this affect our episode one? How does it affect the monthly, the whole thing? And because you've got goals, I've got goals with this, and we'll, by episode 10, we'll have a really good feel for how we're doing, and it'll kick us off into, okay, hopefully this is a success enough and everybody's happy and our partners like this, where we can say, okay, let's do season 2. This is fantastic. And by the way, I've never done, as most people know, I've done, whatever it's been. I took a little bit of break from Content Inc., but I've done 350 some odd episodes every week for a long, long, long time. And I always wanted to try the seasonal mix. So I get to thank you for giving me the opportunity to try a couple of these things that I've always wanted to do and see if they work.
Amazing. All right. Well, there we go. We'll see everybody next episode.
Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Hey creators, that's it for today's episode, and another special thanks to our sponsors Lulu, ConvertKit, and StreamYard for making this season of the 10K Creator possible. Now you can find links and show notes at 10kcreatorshow.com, and every week we'll have different giveaways for people who share the show with their friends and audiences, so head over to 10kcreatorshow.com to learn more. If you're listening for the first time, be sure to subscribe to the Content Inc. podcast, as this show will be on the Content Inc. feed each week. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.